stream with Mark and I, although we're expecting people to watch this afterwards, aren't we, Mark?
Yeah, hopefully. Good morning
Yeah.
from Adelaide. It's 9
Yeah.
o'clock here. It's going to be a hot one, 30 degrees.
Yes, so today we're heading out to the city to do a bit of activism. So we thought we'll do a bit of a pre-activism stream. And I think the topic for today, because we're doing activism today, the topic for today will be activism, right?
Yeah, we'd love to do like a pre-shift talk before we do activism. It'd be cool if people that were going to join us could watch it live and comment. That'd be cool.
Yeah, but we haven't quite organized that to happen. Anyway, so we're going to start off today. We thought it might be a nice thing to do to start off every stream talking a little bit about an animal that lives in a sanctuary. So the animal in the thumbnail of the video, unfortunately, I'm not organized enough to be able to bring him up on the screen, but he's the one in our thumbnail, the three-legged sheep, and we're going to tell his story. So he is from Edgar's Mission, and I'm going to read out what they say about him on their Facebook page, on Edgar's Mission Facebook page. So his name is Hercules, and it says, he lost his leg, life lessons from a humble sheep. Hercules may have lost his leg, but in doing so, he gained a reprieve from his doomed life. For life rarely ends well or is long for a farmed sheep. But a reprieve was not all Hercules gained, for a buddy and our hearts were to make that life complete. Arriving into our care late one evening in October of 2023, he was a pitiful sight and a putrid smell. The smell came from a necrotic and fly-struck tissue that had anchored its way around the broken bone of his left hind leg, a bone that had snapped clean in two and pierced its way through the skin. Its dry and gnarly nature meant that there was no hope of a surgical repair to this dying limb. It, too, told that Hercules had been in this extremely painful and neglected state for some time. Made stronger by surmounting this ordeal, Hercules stands proud before us today. His name is a testament to the Herculean effort he put in just to stay alive until kindness found him. Enjoying the rich rewards of that now is dear Hercules, with a life truly worth living and a best buddy in Switzerland to live it with. That Hercules, a gentle sheep, kept living on when life continued to offer him no hope, is a stellar reminder to us all that our circumstances do not need to define us. Only how we respond to them does. Because one never knows what sits on the other side of heartache until one has the courage to find it. Something we should never lose sight of. If we could live happy and healthy lives without harming others, why wouldn't we? So that's the story of Hercules, the three-legged sheep that we've put there in our thumbnail.
Yeah, thanks for reading that. That's good.
Yeah.
Is that something that we intend to do every live stream, maybe, to I guess, frame our intention, maybe? Why we do what we do?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. We do it for the animals. And I think it's nice to tell the stories often the animals that end up at sanctuaries have been through horrific things and they've come out the other side. And it's nice to tell their stories, I guess. But it also sheds light on the reality for, the individuals, the victims.
Yeah. Would you call those animals, victims or survivors even? I don't know.
Yeah, they've been both, I guess. They've been both, haven't they?
Yeah, they survived us in a way.
Yeah, and I think it's even, it's good to remember before we're going out to activism today. It's good to do that, to remember who we're fighting for, really.
Yeah. I think, check our own egos at the door maybe. And we're doing this for someone else, not for our own benefit, not for our own gain.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's get on to the topic for today of vegan activism. So I thought maybe we could describe a bit about how we do activism first of all. Do you want me to give a bit of an intro into that, or do you want to talk a bit about that?
You can
Maybe
hit that off.
Yeah, you can do that.
Oh, do you want me to do it?
Oh, did you say I can? Sorry. I thought, seeing as I just read the story about Hercules, maybe you can.
Sure, I can give some backstory. So I guess we do street outreach, very non-confrontational. We let people approach us if they're interested. It's just a very casual kind of activism. We'll try to be as educational as possible, try to answer people's questions, try to put down a strong reason for veganism, like strong philosophy, I suppose. And if people want to get involved, I don't know if there's anybody out there listening, but if they're in Adelaide, we'll be heading out today. We're going to be in the city at 11 o'clock. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So we go out there with signs that we've made ourselves. We've got all sorts of signs now that we've kind of made. And they say all different things. So we kind of test out different signs, don't we, a little bit, and just see kind of what gains the most attention from people, what gets us the most people coming up to interact with us. All of the signs, they have a clear vegan message to them, or at least a thought-provoking question. Yes, the signs that we've made. And we go out there with signs. We stand there. We wait for people to come up to us. I mean, we've been doing, you and I, Mark, we've been doing street activism for probably like 8 years since we've known each other, right?
I was a little bit late to the party. I think I was, as I mentioned last stream, when I first went vegan, I just went with what everybody else was doing, and that was the welfare campaigns and like the ban jumps racing, that kind of thing. And then later down the track, I guess how you described veganism and abolition, then I think I was able to articulate better and discuss with people what veganism meant. I think before it was very much hold signs, yell out a few chants, hope that people are kind of on your side about that. But I think with a lot more education, I can articulate a lot better why someone should be vegan. And that, I think, gave me more confidence to directly communicate with people. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Yeah. So the abolitionist vegan message is very clear, right? That we, should not be using animals. We should not be using other sentient beings, full stop, and that, we should not own them as property, because owning them as property essentially is treating them like they're a thing, an object, and they're clearly not objects. We know that, and I think most people agree with that. So I guess the abolitionist vegan, or even just the message of, if you can be vegan, you should be, because otherwise you're just causing unnecessary harm and death to animals. So it's a very clear message. It's not confusing at all. It's very clear. Animals are not objects. They're not resources. They're not ours to use. I think that kind of helps in activism, to have that clear message to just underlie everything, and then you don't have to get so caught up in all the ways that non-vegans sometimes try to derail the conversation. If you always just come back to that message of like, no exploitation, exploitation is wrong, and also if you can be vegan, you should be vegan, otherwise what justifications do you have, for using animals, other than pleasure, amusement, entertainment, fashion? So yeah, I think that's the most important thing that we want to the most important thing to me in activism is that the person that I'm talking to, they leave the conversation when we part and they go on their merry way. They leave without any confusion in their mind about what the message is, right? That if they can be vegan, they should be vegan, and that's it. And anything less than that involves animal exploitation, involves causing unnecessary suffering and death. So when they leave, I want them to be very clear about that message. So that's the aim, really, I think, of our activism, is to just put forward, educate, and put forward a very clear, unequivocal message.
Yeah, and even if they don't go vegan on the spot, like, we're not going to know that anyway. And I think a clear message is important, because even if they don't go vegan, they can hold other people accountable to what veganism is. And the next time they encounter a vegan, let's say, situation, or a vegan person, or whatever, they have a clear understanding of what veganism is, and they might be more open to it the next time they run into it. Yeah, I think because of our method, it's very educational and non-confrontational. This might be their first interaction with a vegan, so it's important to, as you said, lay down a strong foundation, a consistent foundation, even if they don't necessarily agreed with it enough to follow it straight away. But it's an important foundation, I think, for later down the track as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's laying that foundation so that they understand veganism with that and the rationale for it without any confusion. And then really it's up to them to make that choice about what they do with that information and what they do next. But we're certainly not going to compromise our message in any way just to, pander to them or try and, tell them what they want to hear. We're just going to tell them the truth. But I think the way we do it also is that wherever we can, we really try to find common ground and something that we both agree on, so that we're kind of coming at it from a perspective of they actually already agree with the foundations of veganism. Most people agree that it's wrong to cause unnecessary harm to animals. If they see someone on the street, kicking an animal, kicking a dog or a cat or a bird or something like that, then most people would be pretty offended at that, and they would, want to intervene, and they'd see that as wrong. So I think most people already agree that animals are not just objects. Most people agree that they do have a level of sentience, and most people agree that it would be wrong to cause pain, suffering, death just for the fun of it. So I guess we're trying to find that common ground with them and then lead them to see that that requires them to be vegan. Otherwise, they're just contributing to that themselves. So I think Mark actually sent me an interesting video yesterday about, I can't remember whose video it was, but it was a vegan activist, and he was kind of explaining his approach to activism and what he has found that kind of works for him. And then we kind of realized, hey, we kind of do a similar thing, but he just put it really articulately. So I think, maybe you might be, seeing as you sent, you might be able to explain.
I could put it in the chat, maybe, if I can find it. If not now, then later. But yeah, it's by a YouTube channel called Debug Your Brain. And I think his main goal is educating people about vegan activism. And I suppose the way that he comes about it is like good communication is important. And I think there's skills that can be applied in any situation, not just veganism, which is important. So the particular video that I was watching, I'm going to misrepresent him in using my memory, but it was to try and agree with the person on some level in the first interaction. So assuming they come up with an excuse why they shouldn't be vegan, to try and agree with them, whether that's agreeing with exactly what they're saying or agreeing with it in a way that's saying, "Oh, yeah, I can see why you believe that."
Yeah,
Or agreeing to their definition, or
it's almost like agreeing / acknowledging. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't necessarily mean you agree. So, like, if someone says, "Oh, but we need to eat meat for our health," right? You don't have to agree that that's true, but you can kind of acknowledge, like, "Oh, I can see how you would think that because, yeah, that is what we're told our whole lives." And so, yeah, so it's agree / acknowledge where
yeah.
they're coming from.
What's the psychological term for that? Is there a
Um, Validating, I
yeah,
guess.
validate.
Validating the person's experience. Yeah.
Mm,
So you validate what they're saying, like you validate their experience, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you are validating their behavior or, agreeing with the conclusions that they're drawing. So
yeah,
yeah,
maybe
so the first,
validate is a better word, maybe.
yeah, so the first, yeah, maybe. So the first step is to show some kind of validation that you've heard what they're saying and you can understand where they're coming from, even if you don't agree with it.
Yeah.
So that's the first step. And the purpose of that, I think, is to build rapport, first of all. Like when you're talking to someone on the street, like you want to, if you want to, it is kind of the same in psychology, actually. Yeah, if you want to get anywhere with people, if you want to, I mean, building rapport is essential for therapy outcomes. So, in order to help a person, you have to build that rapport first. So, I think, yeah, that can be applied to activism too. If you want to have a good conversation with them where they're going to walk away really actually considering your like veganism and considering what you've said, you have to first establish some kind of rapport with them. So, yeah, so the first step is to build rapport by validating that you can understand their experience or finding something that you kind of agree on. And then the next step, you can explain the next step, Mark. Hang on, why can't I hear you? I can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, technical glitch. So the next step is ask. So do you think, so the example given, if I just give a quick example, is someone says, we shouldn't be vegan because we've always eaten meat. So to validate, as you said, would be maybe, that's true, we have been eating meat for a long time. So that's kind of validating their belief system. The second thing would be to ask them a question. So instead of immediately dispelling their belief and saying, well, you're actually wrong, instead of putting them on the offensive, we can ask a probing question. So do you think that we've been doing it for a long, do you think that because we've been doing it for a long time, that makes it okay? So it gets them to try and come to a different conclusion without you outright stating your beliefs, I suppose, or coming into that confrontation. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So asking them a question about it rather than talking their ear off about, well, here's why I think you should be vegan and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
You're just putting it back on them and getting them to. It's kind of like Socratic questioning. That's what we call it in the psychology.
Yeah.
Socratic questioning, where you're trying to let them come to the conclusion themselves rather than you just telling them well, here's what I think. So,
Yeah. And I'm just realizing the last point is answer the questions. So if they've made a claim and then you've asked a question about that claim and they haven't been able to unpack that themselves, then the third one is then to answer their question. So like then you can kind of go into dispelling the myths kind of thing. And as I'm saying that, I realize why he probably said agree and not validate is because it's A.
yeah.
Easy memory. Agree, ask, and answer.
Yeah, agree, ask, answer. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. Instead of a validate Socratic question and then truth telling, I don't know.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, so who was it again? What was the channel name?
It is the guy's called Debug Your Brain. I'm not sure what his
Debug
actual
Your
name is.
Brain. Yeah, Debug Your Brain. I'd never heard of him before. You sent me that video yesterday. But yeah, I think that was super good. I think that was really interesting.
Is it possible to put the link to the specific video into the chat? I said
Yeah.
grab the chat.
Although I'll probably just put it in the description because there's no one in our chat. There's no one in our chat, so no one will probably see it. I'll put it in there anyway. How about that? And then
That's
I'll put
good
it in the
practice.
description.
Good practice.
So yeah, so and that's kind of I think he articulated it really well, and it's something that we kind of had intuitively used more or less in our activism. Just through our experience, we'd kind of figured out that that is something that is effective. You know, finding something to agree on, Socratic questioning, flipping it back to them, asking them, you know, a question. Like we kind of have been doing that anyway, but it still helped to hear his perspective and put it neatly into the 3 A's and just keep that in mind. So I'm definitely going to try and use that approach today in my conversations with people.
Yeah, let's use it today. Maybe I'll write it on the back of my hand or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good because I had been thinking about an interaction that we had last time where someone asked a question about what about vegan soy and how damaging that is for the environment. And instead of kind of going straight to that answer stage, we did just kind of ask a question, didn't we? We asked him, "What do you mean vegan soy?" And he was able to deconstruct that himself and come to the conclusion that there's no such thing as vegan soy. Like soy is grown for all people, and we're not telling people to eat soy or not eat soy. Like we're there to educate people about animal rights. You know, if he goes away and chooses not to eat soy, that's perfectly reasonable and fine. So yeah, we didn't even have to address any true facts or answer him at all in that case. Like he was able to come to that conclusion very quickly by himself. So I was thinking of just coming up with all the common rebuttals to veganism. And I know that a lot of the popular activists at the moment, they like going straight to the answer. So like, how do we answer if they say, but what about crop death? Okay, here's the facts to counter that. They like going straight to the answer phase. But I did think about writing a list of all those questions. And instead of writing answers, writing questions that would, like Socratic questions that could be asked in that case. And particularly the agreement statements, I think is important too. Like if they say, you know, soy farming is bad for the environment, well, yes, it is. Like it is bad for the environment. Why are we disagreeing with that? Like there's a way to agree with that statement, but still put forward a strong case for animal rights.
Yeah. Interesting. And what was I going to say about that? I guess. Oh, yeah, that's the other thing is I think another reason why it's so powerful to ask them more questions rather than you just yapping at them is I think it turns it back on them to do some of the thinking and coming to their own conclusions, but it also prevents this kind of cycle, like what we noticed in that Earthling Ed video, where he was being kind of come at from all sides from three other panel. He was on like a talk show, morning show or something.
Do we say it was an interview? Like I don't count as an interview, maybe.
More like an interrogation, yeah. He was being interrogated by three non-vegans on like some kind of morning show or news show or something. And it was just like question after question after question. They just kept bombarding him with questions or statements that they wanted him to produce like a rationale for, or, you know, a counter argument for, which he fell into that. And he was kind of, you know, I think fell into that trap a little bit and was trying to like come up with a quick snipe or, you know, a fact to kind of answer their question. But maybe I wonder how it would have gone if he had turned it back on them and being like, well, what do you think about that? Or do you think that, you know, there's that it's humane to do this or whatever, you know, like he could have oops, bumped my camera. You warned me about that, Mark, didn't you?
I did.
But yeah, so yeah, I think it asking them questions back can prevent you from falling into that trap of just always being on the defensive, I guess. And it kind of makes it kind of changes the tone of the conversation. Like it makes it seem like you as the vegan, you're the one that has to always defend your position, and, you know, rather than actually putting the responsibility on the non-vegan and saying, well, actually you justify your position. Why are you not vegan? Like, you explain that to me, you know?
Yeah, I'll write that down. Moral responsibility. Like asking the question, as you said, gets them to do some of the heavy lifting and take some of that moral responsibility onto themselves.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, as you said, it was very frustrating watching a lot of, I mean, they're TV debates, so they're not going to be philosophically genius. But I feel like, Earthling Ed in particular with those, or anybody really, like Joy Cardstrong or other people that go on, do fall into that trap of the person asks the question, they have a quick-witted rebuttal, and then the person asks another question, and they have a quick-witted rebuttal, and it goes around and around in circles. And I'd like to add another A to the list. So we've got agree, ask, answer. Maybe my contribution can be accountability. Because that is something I've been thinking about. How do we make people accountable for their actions, I suppose, or at least accountable for their position? Yeah. So if they are going to come up with a reason why not to be vegan, are they accountable to that reason? And are they accountable to like holding that as, okay, this is actually why? Like, I'm not just coming up with just trying to annoy vegans when I say this, but I'm like being held accountable to this as a strong reason why I'm not vegan. So that when we do ask them questions and we do break down that logic, usually it's logic, to be honest. Do they change their mind? Are they sliding along that scale from veganism is terrible, no one should be vegan, sliding down to, okay, maybe vegans have a point. Even if I'm not going to be vegan tomorrow, I've kind of shifted down that scale.
Yeah.
Maybe we can think of a different A word.
No, I think accountability is actually a really good one to add. Like, I guess part of that probably comes from asking them the questions, because then they've got an accountability to kind of answer their own questions, essentially, and really think about it and think about what they're doing. But yeah, I think that's good.
Let's change it to maybe adjust. Have they adjusted their beliefs?
Okay.
Is that a better word, adjust?
Yeah, well, I guess so.
Okay, let's add adjust in there. Thanks. Yeah, because I'd love to somehow get a sense of where they're at. Like, how strongly do they believe the things they believe? And then at the end of the conversation, have they adjusted their belief?
That's another psychological principle, right? Pre and post measure.
Yeah, but they start with P, so I think of a different word. Can I write that down? Pre and
Or
post.
assess. That's what it would be. You're assessing the person
Oh,
pre and post
assessment.
therapy, conversation, whatever the context is.
Yeah.
I'll do assessment. All right. So the fourth one is to assess. Have they? Well, assess pre and post though. So you have to remember to do it at the start as well.
We'll put assess and then pre and post in brackets. I think it's important for them to see that as well. So, like, even if you in your mind can see that they've, adjusted their beliefs, I think we'd keep adjusting that. Even if we can see in their thinking and what they're saying that they've adjusted their beliefs, I think it's important to somehow have them articulate that. And I'm not sure how to do that. Maybe we can try a few strategies out today. But for them to understand, okay, I came into this conversation thinking one thing. I'm now able to adjust my beliefs, which means then I'm able to adjust them further. Like there's fluidity in their belief system.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're kind of getting them to acknowledge that there is fluidity in their belief system. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
So I guess pre and post assessment. Gosh,
We're going really like
I
deep
sound
this
like
morning.
such a psychologist now. Pre and post assessment. So maybe in activism at the beginning, you might start off with that question. Maybe like ask them on a scale of 1 to 10. How I don't know. What would you ask them? How much how likely would you be? How likely would it be for you to go vegan?
Yeah, you could even ask that as your first question after they've said a statement and you've agreed to it. Your first Socratic question might be like, how strongly does this belief influence your behavior? Or like,
or you could even have it
how
on
does this belief influence your behavior?
That could even be the hook. Like you could have it on a sign, and you could say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely how do I phrase it? What is the likelihood that you would be vegan or something like that?
We need someone in the chat to like. We need some brains trust in the chat.
We need other people to bounce ideas off of. Yeah.
Yeah. If someone watches this when we upload it, can you try and turn on your notifications and join us live potentially, and we can do a little brains trust?
Yeah. So you could even have it on a sign as a way to, get people in and ask them that question straight out. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely would you be to go vegan? Why does that sound wrong? I don't know. I have to think about it later how to phrase it.
Yeah. I'm imagining, I mean, the danger of that is just trolls, is just like people walking past yelling out 10 at you every 5 seconds.
Or 0, you mean? Like they would not go vegan.
10 not likely. I always think of 10 as not likely.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah.
Like 10.
I think of it when it's like 0, meaning like 0 likelihood, like 0%. 0, yeah.
I think of 10 as like, I'm very attached to my beliefs.
Yeah.
Assuming their current beliefs. Well, yeah. Like behavior, maybe attached to the behavior. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, you'd start with that somewhere near the beginning of the conversation. You'd get them to give some kind of rating. Is that the idea? And then at the end, you'd get them to give another rating. Is that the idea?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be as formal as that. You could just ask them at the end of the conversation, like, since having this conversation, like, where do you think you're at now? Like, do you think you've adjusted your beliefs, or do you think you'll adjust your behavior to align with your beliefs, or like something like that?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Now the other, another activism technique, I think, is to try and use what they're saying and use the views that they maybe already have to try and work with that as much as possible, kind of thing. So I guess that comes into that first, the agreement.
Yeah, this is part of the agree stage.
Yeah,
maybe you can like unpack that a little bit more.
Yeah, so I guess you want to try, like, I'm trying to think of an example. The only example I can think of is religion, but that's probably not the best example because I don't know heaps about it. And so I feel like, but I guess, yeah, to use that as an example, if someone brings up, you know, the Bible and that, God gave us animals to eat, or that God put animals here for us, or whatever, something like that. You might kind of try and like stay on that level with them a little bit by kind of saying, oh, so like, what does the Bible actually say about it? Like, do you know the direct quote? Or you might, I don't know, try and talk about if there's any contradictions in the Bible about it. So, I don't know much about it. That's why I didn't want to give this
Yeah,
example. Like,
yeah, it's a
I think
tricky example.
one
Yeah,
conversation I had was like, I tried to mention that in the Garden of Eden, they, I mean, they were vegan, weren't they, in the Garden of Eden?
you talk to one person, they say one thing. You talk to another person. I mean, yeah, I mean, religion's probably a difficult example for this method because this method, I think, is based in logic and reason. And if someone can say, well, the Bible says this, so like there's not really much logic and reason behind that other than you have to dispel their whole system of belief, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
you can't simultaneously use logic with the Bible because the Bible says one thing and you just have to follow it. There's not really a logical system to follow.
yeah,
Am I making sense with that?
yeah, yeah. What's another example of like something that people might bring up and you try and kind of like work with their current beliefs?
Okay, so crop deaths is probably the
Yeah.
happening one at the moment.
That's, I swear every non-vegan is mentioning this right now. I see it
Mm.
everywhere, like on Facebook and everything.
Mm.
Everyone's talking about crop deaths, which,
Yeah.
in case anyone watching doesn't know about, it's this idea that that some animals die in the process of growing and harvesting crops, like plant foods, that essentially the food that vegans eat
And
currently.
only vegans eat plants.
Currently, vegans are the only ones that eat plants. Yeah, I actually saw, a some non-vegan Facebook page that was like some keto. I don't know why it came up in my feed, but some like keto diet Facebook page or something posted like this meme image thing, and it was like, my diet equals 2 cow deaths per year.
Mm.
Vegan diet equals 90 animal deaths per year, like, you know,
Mice and
like
birds.
mice, and like implying, that those deaths are coming from crops, like plants that they eat.
Mm.
And I just was like, what? Like, you only eat 2 cows per year, and that's all you eat. So like you don't eat any plants. Like, I think it's just this idea that like only vegans eat plants or something. Like, it's
Yeah.
just so ludicrous. And yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah, see that's a good example because if we were to put ourselves in the shoes of like a TV debate situation, they often come up with like a statistical rebuttal. So like, well, actually, so they'll go straight to the answer point, right? They'll go, well, actually, X percentage of animals are killed in crop farming compared to X percentage killed in agriculture, and X percentage of food has to be fed to, like, it's very statistical, I think. But
Hmm.
then the problem with that is like, there's always a study to like be taken out of context and like
Yeah.
you can always
So
find data showing the opposite, or
yeah, there's a
we
study
like,
out there showing anything that you want to find if you look
yeah.
for it.
Does the person you're talking to actually know about statistics and the actual data?
And do they even care? I don't
Yeah.
even think they really care, to be
Are
honest.
they accountable to their position?
So if we use that as an example, then, so someone, let's say today, someone comes up to us and says, you know, oh, but vegans kill animals too because they eat plants, they eat, you know, soy, and to farm, like grow soy, you know, it causes deaths to like wild animals. So let's use that
Yeah.
agree, ask, answer approach. So maybe to agree, firstly, I would be like, yeah, okay, I know animals do die
Yeah.
in the process of growing and harvesting soy.
It's true. Yeah. A lot of
Yeah.
vegans will automatically say, no, no, animals are harmed, which is
Or they'll try and be like,
hide
but
it.
yeah, like, or they'll be like, oh, but what about this or something. So
Yeah.
yeah, so first we agree, yes, we do acknowledge
Yeah.
that some animals are killed in the process of growing any crop, really.
Mm.
Okay, so we've agreed with that.
Yeah.
And then ask. So what would we ask them to consider? What would we ask them back?
Well, probably similar to the like soy, the vegan soy, is that ask like, what do you mean? So I get them to clarify their point. Like, what do you mean about vegan food? Like when you say plants, or like who's eating these plants?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good one. But honestly, I feel like there's almost infinite ways that you could go from there. Like there's
Yeah.
actually quite a few different pathways you could kind of take and different things you could ask them to consider. So
Mm.
you might ask them, yeah, about what they mean by.
Yeah. I'm writing some of this down, by the way.
So a question I thought of maybe asking them is, so you acknowledge, yes, animals do die to, you know,
Yeah.
produce crops. I might ask them, do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah.
So we might see if we can get them to agree that that's not a good thing, right?
Mm.
Because then we can kind of be like, yeah, I agree. I don't think it's a good thing either.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't know. There's probably in that ask stage, stage 2, you could probably go back and forth actually with a few different questions. I don't know,
Mm.
maybe
Well,
before you
yeah.
move on to the answer stage.
Yeah, I've got just a list of Socratic questions that we could probably directly apply. So, like, what do you mean by that? And then, state their position. Or what do you think is the main issue with that?
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah.
Or just could you expand on that? Or what do you mean by that? Um,
Yeah. So with my example, asking them, yeah, like, do you, yeah, the animals die. What do you think about that? Or do you think
yeah,
that is a good thing or a bad thing that they die to, you know, produce crops and like that kind of thing, right?
yeah.
Okay. And then where would you? Well, assuming we went with my pathway first, where would we go from there?
Which was your
They
path?
might. So it depends what they say, I suppose. So they might say, um, well, I assume they'll probably be quite caught off guard by that, to be honest.
Yeah, most of the time they go, oh, yeah, don't worry, or something like that. Like they'll kind of
Yeah,
back out of their original claim. That's my experience anyway, with that
yeah,
particular question on like vegan plant foods as opposed to just plant foods, or like vegan soy, or yeah, they generally back out of it pretty quick. Like it's
yeah,
not really
yeah.
logical
They can
position.
see that you're again, and it's kind of like you are on the upper foot. You do have the upper foot, I think, if
And at this point,
they
we
can see
haven't
that.
said anything. Like we
Yeah,
haven't made any
we
claim per
haven't
se.
even said our beliefs, have we?
Yeah.
We haven't even said our beliefs, and already we're
Mm.
kind of like on the upper. We have the upper hand.
Yeah.
So
It's not a game,
it's not a game. It's not a game, but
but it is a game of life and death for these
it's not
animals.
a game. But when you compare it to the alternative where you're kind of on the defensive the whole time, that's not good either. So
Yeah.
it's better that you kind of Yeah, it's not a game. Maybe I shouldn't word it like that. But I guess I'm just saying, maybe instead of saying we have the upper hand, I'm saying, well, at least maybe we don't have the, like, we're not stuck in a corner. We're not sticking ourselves in a corner.
Yeah, we're not. Yeah, that's right.
So,
I think vegans a lot of the time get themselves stuck in corners. Like if they try and say, no animals are killed for our food. That's a classic. It's just like now they're making ridiculous claims that they cannot possibly defend.
yeah.
Like we're just making ludicrous claims either side. We're just like playing tennis with ludicrous claims
Yeah.
back and forth. Yeah.
Or just constantly like throwing the blame. So it's like
Yeah.
if a vegan responded like, oh yeah, but you like at least they're not like factory farmed like the animals that you kill and like I don't know,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
So another question, I had another one in mind. What was it? I had another like pathway that you could go, another question that you could ask them. Maybe like, do you think that the animals dying to produce crops? That's right. Do you think that that justifies also eating
Mm,
animal flesh? So, like, you could ask them, like, yes, like you agree, yes, animals do die to produce plant foods, which we do. Like, we
yeah.
need to eat plant foods to survive, whether you're vegan or not. You can't just live off of meat. Like, that's not possible. Even non-vegans need to eat plants, right? So I guess you could say the fact that animals do die to produce plant foods, do you think that justifies also
Exploiting.
exploiting and farming and killing animals directly for food? So
Yeah.
that could be another one.
Yeah. I like taking it's probably important to take the justice route with that one. Because if we are talking about like say yes, animals die plant farming, that's a bit of a um, like just reducitarian kind of suffering mentality.
Yeah,
So I think it's probably important to say like, does that also justify like exploitation, or does that justify enslaving others? Like use that kind of language maybe, so it takes it away from like equal like reducing suffering kind of thing. Is that
yeah,
making sense?
yeah. Another question I thought of, I think there's like infinite questions that you could ask back to that, but
Yeah, I've got a website up and there's heaps.
another question I just thought of was so let's say maybe even that they might agree, like you might ask them, do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing that animals die that way? If they
Yeah.
happen to say that it's a bad thing, the next question you might ask them is, do you think that that problem of animals dying to produce crops, do you think that problem is more likely to be resolved or figured out, a way around
Mm.
in a vegan world or a non-vegan world?
That's a good one.
Or, so because to me, I mean, instead of just saying like, well, actually, if the world was vegan, then we'd probably be investing more into figuring out ways to avoid those deaths as well. Like we might invest more in technologies that maybe scare the animals away, or something like that, and or keep the animals out somehow or something. I don't know.
Well, that's the answer
But
stage,
instead
right?
of yeah, that's the answer. So
If they
instead of
can't, if they don't understand the questions that you're asking, and they can't come to those conclusions, or they don't really know, then you could say that stuff as the
yeah,
answer.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, instead of just saying that straight off the bat, you're
Mm.
asking them and you're trying to kind of get them to come to that conclusion themselves.
Mm.
And then, so you're saying if they don't, then you might provide your own answer. Yeah,
Yeah. Or even just clarifying, um, like, what do you think about this? And then you could give your answer
yeah,
and then
yeah.
see if they're on board with that. Veganism is so logical. It's just like, yeah, so based in logic.
we have that on our side. We have logic on our side and
Yeah.
moral consistency on our side, I suppose. So it's just about helping other people to see that as well. But, you know, I guess the other thing is we don't always have the answers, I suppose, to difficult moral problems or
That's
moral
important to
questions.
acknowledge.
You know, we don't always have the answers. Like we have a pretty good rationale for veganism, and we need to definitely do everything we can to help others to understand that rationale, and understand why they should be vegan. It doesn't mean we always necessarily have all the answers to all moral problems in the world, you know.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think non-vegans can try and it's like they want to try and catch us out or something. Like they want to try and show
Yeah.
us ways that we're being, you know, inconsistent.
I mean, that's
But
what we're trying to. So fair game, right?
I guess, yeah, I guess we're trying to do that to them too. So
We just can't get
um,
sucked into that, like
yeah,
that
we
back
can't
and
get sucked
forth,
in.
as you said. Like, well, you do this, well, you do that. We like,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I think to not get sucked in, we can acknowledge that we don't know everything or that we're not sure. Like even
yeah,
if they say something that you haven't really thought about before or you don't have enough information to comment on, you can say that. You know, you can kind of say, you know, actually I'm not 100% sure like how I would answer that, or I
yeah,
don't know much about that situation. I haven't really looked into any research. That you can say that. But then I guess you can also say, you know, but what I do know is this, and
yeah.
you know, so
And you can use Socratic questions as well when you don't know. I think that's why Socratic questions are also important too, because it's like, well, I don't know. Can you clarify what you're saying? Or I don't know. How does this apply to X, Y, Z?
yeah,
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 I think that it's good. I think these are good questions, particularly for people that, I mean, for everybody. I'm going to say everybody. I'd love to see more professional activists, professional activists using this method. It'd be great. But
Well,
particularly,
we'd like to see more activists out there in general.
yeah, okay, across the board. But I think it's particularly good for those who have watched activists on TV and go, wow, they're so smart. They know all these statistics and they know all the facts and all this kind of stuff. And they know how many animals are killed in this country per second. And like people that don't feel comfortable being able to like quote all these statistics and things. I think Socratic questions are good because, yeah, it puts the work, the knowledge onto the non-vegan. Like the accountability is on the non-vegan to justify their position.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I guess just quickly going back to the crop death things, like there's a lot you could say about that. We've just covered, you know, I guess a couple of the points, but there's a lot of, you know, I think there's a lot of different directions you could go with it. And yeah, I guess it's just trying to get a feel for like what point the other person is really trying to make. And
Yeah,
but yeah, maybe we should summarize. We've got 5 minutes before we've got to go.
yeah,
Maybe we
we've
should
literally got to
summarize,
get going.
do a summary of what we've talked about today. That's another psychology tip.
Summary doesn't start with A.
I'm realizing how much my psychology training helps in activism and stuff like this.
Well, it's communication, right? It's building
Yeah,
relationships,
true.
communicating to others, building
Very,
rapport, all of those
very
things.
true. So, to summarize, today we've been talking about all things vegan activism. Mark and I are going out today to our local city centre to hold signs and invite people to have rational, calm, logical, friendly
Logical.
conversations with us about veganism. The goal is that they walk away from the conversation with a very clear idea of what veganism is and why they should be vegan. We've talked about the three kind of steps or phases of conversations with non-vegans in activism. So stage one is to agree or to acknowledge their point of view and the statement that they're putting across. And then the next stage is to ask them a question, use that Socratic questioning stuff to technique to ask them what they think, rather than just straight away jumping to, well, I think this. So you're putting it back on them to ask them what they think. You're trying to get them to come to their own conclusions and consider their own question. And then the phase 3 is to answer. So then maybe after you've given them a good go, you can kind of jump in with some of your thoughts about it and answer the question from your perspective and do a bit of education and that kind of thing. So, and then Mark suggested maybe a fourth one, which is to, assess maybe at the beginning of the conversation.
Or at the end.
Or maybe just at the end, just at the end, you could ask them,
how do you feel this conversation went?
How do you feel this conversation went? Or you could even ask them, do you think that your views about veganism have changed since the start of this conversation, or something like that? So the fourth phase would be to assess, see whether they have learned anything or changed the way that they think about veganism or something like that, or whether they're more likely to consider veganism. You could ask them that. Do you think after this conversation you're more likely to consider veganism than at the start of this conversation? You could ask them something like that. And then what was the last thing we were just talking about?
Well, it's just examples, really.
Yeah, just going through. Yeah, that's right. Just going through examples.
The crop death example.
The crop death example. Yeah.
So yes, animals are killed. Do you think that's bad? What do you think that means? Or do you think that justifies also exploiting other animals?
Yeah, something like that.
And then,
and another summary point from today is that when you're doing activism, you don't always have to know the answers.
Yeah, that is right.
You don't be careful of falling into that trap of being interrogated, where you're constantly on the defensive, and asking them questions, the Socratic questioning, that can help prevent that. So that's another point to be considerate of. And then lastly, it's from a psychological perspective, you're going to be more effective if you can remain calm, remain rational, remain friendly, build rapport with them, keep the conversation. It doesn't mean you have to agree with what they're doing or condone or pander to their actions, but you still want to, it's going to be, you're getting your point across is going to be more effective if you can build some rapport, and keep it friendly.
There's a way to put forward your views or facts or ask questions in a way that's powerful, that's important, that's necessary to listen to without being aggressive. I try and teach the children that. I work with children, so it's often they don't have the language to say stop to someone, so they'll use physical violence or they'll yell or kick and scream or something like that. But it's about learning how to positively put your case forward in a strong way that's not violent or not aggressive.
Yeah. But having said that, I think people should still get out there and do activism, even if they're not completely confident that, that I don't know, you don't have to have all the answers, and you can still just get out there, give it a go, admit, just level with them, admit if there's things that you don't know or you don't have an answer for, So that was another point that we talked about, is that sometimes people like Earthling Ed and people that know a lot of facts, they might make it look like you need to know all these facts to do effective activism, but actually you don't. All you need to know is just the foundations of veganism and the rationale for it. That's really all you need to know. And it's helpful. It's helpful if you do know other stuff too, but
come out with other activists and just stand next to them and listen to them and just absorb it. That's how you learn, right? Just get out there Like if someone wants to stand next to me and hand out flyers and I'm doing all the talking and they just want to listen, like that's fine. Like I'm cool to like help them on that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how you learn as well. You listen to others, you just build up your confidence in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, I think that was good. There's probably just so much more we could say about, activism, but I think we've said enough today, and that was really good chat.
We'll see you out there.
Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.
Fighting for Hercules.
Bye.